with the best father and son team on the internet. It's time for Homie and the Dude.
What is poppin', party people? This is Homie and the Dude, the father and son TTRPG and MMA podcast, and the home of about 1,000 things that we're doing right now. Literally, but wait, no, it's mostly around D&D and MMA. And right now we have an incredible guest right in that D&D world that we're pretty tickled to have on our show. Please introduce Cyle, the project manager for the Rolling Together stream team. Cyle, welcome.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm awesome. Thank you for having me. This is so cool. I'm so excited.
We've been really excited about this for a while. Matt recommended us speaking to you, Matt from Dungeon Glitch, and I've followed you guys for a long time on Twitter and have been keeping up to date with the stuff that you guys do. So super stoked to have you here. I wanted to actually dive in with a bit of a weird question for you, because I've always been curious. I've seen your logo about everywhere. I've seen your beautiful art on your website. What in God's name is the creature that is in your logo? What is that creature? Do you have a name for it? What is this dragon kind of thing that you have?
So first of all, her name is Light Holly.
Nice.
And she is a prismatic dragon pup. So there is so in 3.5 D&D, you had epic dragons, because you had epic levels. After you got to level 20, then you'd level in a sort of different way. And they created all these epic creatures. So for the dragons, they created the Force Dragon and the Prismatic Dragon. And the Prismatic Dragon essentially, is all this light and it's rainbows and all that fantastic stuff. And then you have the Force Dragon, which is sort of arrogant and ridiculous, and actually had one of my favorite abilities that I've ever read in D&D, which is arrogant superiority, which is if the way it would translate into 5e is that if the dragon is physically above you, it always has advantage on its attack rolls.
Wow, incredible. Arrogant superiority. Wouldn't that be the description of most DMs?
Yeah. In a sense, for sure.
That's a whole discussion right there.
That is a whole discussion.
To answer your question, that is Light Holly, the prismatic dragon pup, whose mother actually does live in our homebrew world.
Incredible. Yeah, because I've been seeing that around for ages, and I've loved the art. I love the way that Holly looks very friendly, looks very inviting, and gives me very much like Haku from Spirited Away kind of vibes, that kind of thing, and yeah, I just absolutely loved that art. So I had to ask. I just had to. It's been eating away.
I adore it, and actually we just got new emotes done for the Twitch channel, and the final animated emote that we did was Light Holly jumping around and spraying rainbows.
Beautiful. Nice. That's amazing. Well, I'm gonna just build on the Twitch channel. I was gonna wait a little bit, but since we're there, let's go for it. I just love your Twitch channel. I can tell how much love you've put into that channel. There are just the different elements that you have for the audience to interact, the stream commands, the bit rewards, even the different aspects of donations and sub rewards and all of that. What was the inception and the development of the channel to get to the point where it is really welcoming and very open to interaction with the audience?
Well, so for me, I think it's, first of all, I have to shout out Lando, who's one of the partners over at Playnerd Allies. Amazing, delightful person. We've been working together for a year and a half now. And just, he's the one that does all of our back-end Twitch stuff. So he's our tech guy, and has learned so much about how to do things on Twitch that I have no idea. It literally would still be me and a camera if I didn't have him. but does just the most incredible overlay. So I just want to make sure that like I shout him out. He's amazing. L's in the chat for Lando, please. Like, but to answer your question, it comes from a couple of different places. There is, first of all, the understanding of what we're doing. You know, when you are on Twitch, regardless of what you say you are doing, you are on Twitch because you want that audience. For whatever reason you want it, it can be totally different things, you know, but that is absolutely a component of it. If you didn't want it, you would be doing something like you would be pre-recording it, putting it on YouTube, or just doing it at home or something like that. We are in a performance space. And the lovely thing when it comes to the performance of it is that we're not just in a static performance space. So it's not like watching a movie, or even sometimes like going to see a play. It's a truly interactive artistic space that you're creating there. And when you understand that, it changes the way you start looking at both Twitch and your chat. For me, I've sort of identified 3 sort of types of gamers when it comes to TTRPGs. You've got your hobbyists, you've got your gamers, and then you've got your artists. And it's like, and you can be in multiple camps there. It's not like they're mutually exclusive. But like the hobbyists are there because they love it. There is this sort of, you know, fabulous connection for them emotionally to this, and they just want to hang out. They want to have fun with their friends. Fabulous. The gamers are there. These are the people that love the crunch. They love the numbers. They love the dice. They love talking, you know, on stream. It's all about, hey, I took this feat with this multi-class and I did this, and now I can do this amazing thing in combat or in, you know, out of combat, whatever it is, super crunch. Then you've got the artists who are looking much more at the storytelling aspect of it. And what you can do with that. I definitely fall into the storytelling category. Like I'm storytelling heavy and hobbyist light. You know, like my weakest is definitely the gamer. Like I'm not a crunchy DM. And when that happens, when you're all about the storytelling, what you want is as much inspiration as you can get for that story. And for me, what that means is having as many obstacles put in my place in front of me as can be had. So that as the DM, if I'm like the monster, if I am the big bad, whatever, if I'm just the environment that you're trying to get through, like whatever I'm representing in that moment, everything that helps the players is an obstacle for me getting to my goal, which is to stop the players, you know, to hold them back, to defeat them, to defend my cave, to, you know, like keep my layer intact, whatever that is. And so when the audience gets to throw those obstacles in your way, it's great. It's even better when the DM utilizes those obstacles to create even better stories, you know? And the way that I like to look at it is just, if let's say you're going into a layer and there's a bunch of arrow traps and you can pick up a couple shields and run through, totally fine, you know? If the hero is then given something that just blocks the arrows anyway, I need to come up with something else to do. And so suddenly, instead of a hero just running through, now the hero's running through, and I am creating some weird mechanical construct out of my throne that is now going to like shoot bolts at them or something like that, which forces them to shift their action, and everything becomes much more lively and engaging as the story develops, as new obstacles happen within an encounter, regardless of whether that's a battle encounter or not, you know? So that's why I do that, because I love that.
Thanks for watching this episode. We really appreciate you supporting Homie and the Dude.
Please hit us with the Holy Trinity, like our Facebook page, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and follow us on Instagram. Just search @Homie and the Dude. It all really helps. You touched on a lot of amazing stuff there, and stuff that I think is, you know, so as the dungeon master for our actual play stuff, and I've created a good percentage of our world at this point and done all of that, because we do homebrew as well. We don't do any Wizards of the Coast or third party kind of content. We run a lot of homebrew stuff here, and it's one of those things. You mentioned a couple of different things. You mentioned the hobbyist, the gamer, and the artist, and I also sit very much in the artist category. I let my players break the rules pretty freaking regularly, because for moments of great story, I'm happy for someone to use a levitate spell a little bit differently than it's meant to, because it's it fits the moment and allows us to elevate the moment and things like that. And I think it's funny, like I agree with you. I'm also not the crunchy guy. Like I'm not that, though I can be crunchy. And when I play, I'm a lot crunchier, because I've got, my character sheet in front of me, and I'm like, okay, so I'm playing, for example, at the moment, a blood hunter Dampier. And I'm like, okay, so let me think about how I'm going to use my blood curses to then elevate the ability to suck people's blood. Like that's
for me, I would love something like, if somebody did something like that in my campaign, for me it would be like, I would want to homebrew like a thing where you throw the curse onto it, and then if you actually suck their blood while the curse is active, something happens.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
things
super,
like that.
That's super
that's something that I would adore.
Yeah. And I'm like, again, I think we're very much aligned from what you've said in terms of, that's a big part of what I do as well. Like all of my players, every single player at my table currently has something that I have homebrewed specifically because of their backstory, or something that, suits their character, whether it be, Blanco, our ranger awakened dogs, channel grief because they've gone through a lot of grief in their time, so they can channel that and use it for good. Or, Rom, our Warforge's giant mechanical arm that he has that isn't a part of the rest of his body, and I think that's such an important thing to elevate the game and to do things. I really found a lot of value in what you said of you're talking about as a DM, the things that are being put in front of you are the things to like kind of stop you and to have the players have their hero moments, the shit that players play D&D for. And I wanted to ask, because someone asked me a question, basically two questions that I'm very interested to hear your opinion on. The first one is someone asked me, how do you feel as the DM that you constantly lose? How does that feel for you? And someone was like when you signed up to be a DM, did you know that you were going to constantly lose? Was that something that you were prepared for? And I was like, I thought about it. I was like, I have never thought about that. That's never even occurred to me. I've seen my players succeeding as me winning as well in a weird way. And so, how do you feel about that?
So for me, part of storytelling is understanding how story beats happen, what that looks like, how to create an engaging story, an exciting story, a compelling story. And a huge part of that is player failure.
Yeah.
If they just win every single thing they do, if they succeed every single encounter, that is boring for anyone except the people playing. Like, it's nice. And very specifically, if you want to get into the sort of physiological, neurological thing, you get that sort of that little dopamine pop. Like when you succeed, when you do something a little great, it's just like, ooh, dopamine, boop, 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 boop. So absolutely, if you're just playing at a table, players can succeed more. But as a storyteller with an audience, you have to be aware that, and the players do too, this is really important. The players have to trust the DM. So that when a player doesn't succeed at something, they know they're not being punished. That this is not like, screw you ate the last chip in the bowl, so now you have to be punished for this. That's not what that is. It is that this is part of the story. And when you generate that trust with your players, that this is part of the story, you get amazing role playing, where it's like, just yesterday, so first up, before I get to that story, let's go back, because I have a question for you about the difference between breaking the rules and breaking the lore. Because for me, breaking the rules is fine, because you do that in real life all the time, but I will not break my lore. And the reason for that is that all actions become meaningless after the lore has been broken. You know, if you can just sort of do whatever the hell you want at all times, then why even tell the story? You know, there is, and like having a homebrew world, one of the most important things is the depth for me of the lore. It's that we have been working on this for a year plus, and the players are actively creating parts of the world. You know, that it is just, we're going to go here and you're going to let me know what this looks like, what is happening here, what's going on over here. And so breaking the rules of a space is fine. There will be repercussions. There will always be repercussions. But if you try to break the lore, you will be just bashing your head into a brick wall. And you can do that as long as you want to. The lore is not going to change unless you do something so astonishing that it changes the world. Yeah. But just telling me you want to change the world is absolutely not enough to do that.
I'm not like, again, I can already tell that you and I are very much on the same wavelength. I can tell very almost instantly that as DMs we're living in that same kind of space almost instantaneously. I fully agree with you. You know, there's, you know, for example, our world is set in a world of floating islands, and there's a gray cloud layer. If you fall through the clouds, guess what? You're fucking dead. Like I'm not changing that for anyone. Like there's no magic that you can do to fix that. But like, and within the deeper lore, and you know, as you get into, you know, factions and you know who's doing what, and you know, all that kind of stuff, I fully agree with you. Even down to how magic works in my world. You know, it's very important that, you know, that kind of stuff doesn't get broken and that you remain consistent, because I think, you know, something that I want to come back to that you said in a minute is, you know, those doing it for the audience, like understanding that you are putting on a show for the audience at the same time as playing a D&D game, because home games are very different to, you know, doing a stream. And, you know, we have spoken about that many times on this podcast about the big differences that are in that. And I think, you know, you're totally right in of that, finding the moments where you hit good lows, good highs, you know, players struggle, you know, all that kind of stuff, and giving a real world, what I like to call like real world grit to a fantasy world, I think is really important. And, you know, showing that, you know, cool, if this bad thing is happening and you try and step in to stop it, cool. Well, now if you like kill a guard that's being oppressive, for example, you're now wanted by this like group of people, and like, you know, making sure that the players do see consequences for the actions that they take. But yes, I agree with you. Break rules, and then deal with them as a DM, and write it down what rules you've broken so that you know when they're going to be broken again, and you know, you can apply that consistency. But also, you cannot break, you know, what is written within the lore of what you've kind of laid down. And that's how everything works. You know, if you look at, you know, if we talk about the masters of what we do, if you're looking at, you know, William Gibson within sci-fi, Tolkien within fantasy, you know, all these amazing people, you know, have been doing it for years. They don't break what the lore of the setting or the location that they're in. So I fully agree with that.
The thing is that once you have solid lore, then you can use that as a jumping off point in a million directions. Yeah. Like once that foundation is set, you can do all kinds of fabulous stuff. And it's one of my favorite moments is like, so when I talk about breaking rules, I mean like even like societal rules within the thing. Like there's sort of two concepts here. One is, I love it when they do like, when they sort of try to amplify something and they sort of try to break a rule like with a spell or something like that. And there are moments when I will allow that in service of the idea that probably most of the time, there's not somebody coming up to you when you level up to say, here is the fly spell. Here is this thing that you now know. It would be taking that levitate and playing with it and doing things with it until you figure out how to fly. And that's when you learn the new spell. You know, I do that with my players with things like with one of them, it was, I want to learn Fireball when I get to, you know, 5th level. I was like, great. If you're not using any other fire spells, you are absolutely not going to learn Fireball. Like it's not a thing. But if you're using the Firebolt cantrip all the time, you can absolutely start figuring out what else can I do with this as a role-playing exercise. And then eventually like you're in battle, and like with this one, it was great because like they're like, I'm gonna send a firebolt out, and I'm trying really hard to just like get as many people with this firebolt as I can. And I was like, okay, and this time it actually explodes. And you have now figured out how to do a fireball spell, you know, and it's just things like that that allow for development through like, you know, long-term study to reward specifically players that have been there for a while, you know?
It is, I mean, what's interesting is we're talking about, in a sense, we're talking about sort of a little bit higher level aspects of playing D&D and different techniques and different styles and things like that. I'm curious, you know, I've been thinking about it myself as well. Like, what is it? And you know, you can I think put your finger on a couple things when you look at the benefits of playing D&D, whether it's getting together with friends, having an opportunity to be a little bit more free, forgetting the world, being more artistic, being more creative, you know, all of these things, stepping outside of your own life and your own problems into, you know, some other fantasy or some other whatever. And all of those things for me, to some degree, are there, but I'm really trying to hone in on what is the thing, like what is the real, you know, when you talked about engaging with your brain and serotonin and stuff, what's your thing underneath it all that keeps bringing you back to D&D?
Because, you know, I know your one. I know for a fact your one is hitting emotional highs and hitting emotional lows. I know that you love having scenes where everyone is pissing themselves laughing, but I also know, like, you know, Geo trying to do parkour, you know, Tom plays a turtle who is, we've made turtles exceedingly slow in our world. And so Tom's character is very slow and not very nimble. And he's also pretty blind when he doesn't have glasses on. So he was trying to do this little like parkour jump move and just completely failed, rolled shit. And it was just perfect. It was absolutely hilarious. And it was great. But then on the other side, we come to the other side where, and spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched one of our most recent episodes, Geo died, like just outright died. Like there was no death saves. It was enough damage to just put him down. And Tom had this really deep, intimate moment with a character that was in, you know, this purgatory plane that, you know, has been actually trying to contact him ethereally for a very long time. And it was just this really beautiful moment that hit this emotional moment for you where you were just really in it. You're, you know, expressing emotions. And, you know, often our players come to tears. And I know for you, that's something that you love. You love that roller coaster in a D&D game.
I mean, I'll, since you've come to me, I'll go for, let's all share if we could, just what our thing is. But I know for me, I just know that I'm not as free as I'd like to be in my real life. And what I mean by free is like, there's a filter of decorum that I need to have, and it's appropriate, whether it's professionally or even personally.
Absolutely.
That
we all code switch, you know, like it's a code switching thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you like, for me, when I look at artists, if I look at actors or musicians, someone on stage, painters, the ones that I'm attracted to most are the ones that I can see have freed up the most. And they're just going with some of this organic energy that's taking them to a place that they don't even, at times, it looks like, know what's happening. They're just kind of in that flow, right? The flow state. That's the thing I want to explore. I want to get as free as I can in this setting, because I'm not as much as I'd like to be in my real life setting. The irony here is I'm getting more and more free in my real life setting, the more D&D I play, which is kind of a weird thing. Anyway, that's mine. And it does complement what you're saying, which is when you are free, you're open to the whole spectrum of emotions. So that's kind of my deal.
So like, one of the best things that I've ever heard when it comes to that, when it comes to like talent, what that looks like why you are attracted to people, it absolutely fits into that freedom. It was somebody telling me many years ago, before I started my performance career, that was just, talent is just the willingness to experience. That's all. That's a willingness to just, whatever the scene calls for, you are willing to go there. And it seems very simple, but it's not, because we all have defense mechanisms. We all have trauma and triggers and all of the things that keep us from being the perfect person that we all would love to see in the mirror, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in that performance space, if you are willing to experience anything, then you can do that. You can become that thing. You can truly experience it. And it's even more important when it comes to, I think, drama, like the low points than the high points. Like comedy is great and I love it. And it is very difficult to do, you know, if you do not have some training with it. Like there's a lot of people who think that they can do comedy on stream and they are absolutely incorrect. But with drama, like one that I have is I did a show with the Grand Guignol Theater Company, and we did Titus Andronicus. And Grand Guignol is a theatrical style where it's very specifically like way over the top. It is like slasher film meets Benny Hill. You know, it is, and one of the techniques that they use is called the hot and cold shower, where it's like you will have this incredibly bloody scene that would be totally appropriate in like a torture porn, you know, and then immediately the next scene is like a lighthearted romp at the daycare, you know, like, and it's fine. Then you go back into the torture, and it's just, and it's a way to just keep screwing with people's like emotional balance in order to make everything more impactful. And in this show, so Titus Andronicus is Shakespeare's bloodiest play. Everybody kills each other. It is the worst things you can imagine happen. And so there was a scene. First of all, when my friends asked me, what's your favorite moment in the thing, you know, in the show that you get to do, which is something that you'll ask, you know, oh, what's your, like, what's the scene where like you really feel like you get to. Mine was, because Grand Guignol also, like, we would hand out ponchos to people because there's so much blood. Like, so it was, I would tell them, so I guess the scene that's like the most involved for me is I get to go up to a guy, stick my hand down his pants, rip off his genitals, and we had like an actual like dildo that was filled with blood. So literally rip it off, spray it around the audience, throw it into a pit, and then kick him into a pit after it. And it's just, I'm like, and that's Shakespeare. There you go. And so, but there was a scene where it's one of the most famous non-scenes in Shakespeare. It's the Rape of Lavinia. And it is where the two brothers, the sons of the king, go and sexually assault this girl. It normally happens off stage, but because this was Grand Guignol, it happened on stage. And so it's a very, very intense scene for everyone involved. And it's one of those things where if you're doing a scene like that, you need to, now let me be clear, this is like the most extreme version that I had to do in my acting career. On our channel, one of the lines is no sexual assault. Like, we just won't do it. We're not going to touch it. It's not a thing. But in the acting roles, it's like you have to, there are times when you're going to get roles like this. And you have to make sure that you and the other person that's in the scene with you feel safe. And so what we would do before the show every day is we both used to love hand clapping games as kids. And so we would sit there for 15 minutes and we would do like Miss Mary Mac, all dressed in black, and do like all of like just these little things, just letting us know we're here, I'm here with you. We're doing this. I love you as a person. My character is different than me as a human, and your character is too, and you're safe, and it is okay. So now, because we know that we're safe, we can go truly experience this. All of the horror that is involved in this in order to create a response from the audience. And for me, that is a huge part of D&D in general, in a much milder way. That there is, I have never created a character that after the fact, I didn't see some part of some trauma that I've experienced. You know, doesn't matter how different I'm trying to create the character, there's always going to be a tiny little bit of you in there. And I think that is the most powerful thing about D&D, is it allows you to explore yourself, your friends, the world around you, the world inside you, through a filter that still gives you real information about what's happening. So if there is a moment in D&D, and it can happen just in the most lighthearted scenes, suddenly you have an internal realization about yourself, or about a relationship that you have in the real world, or about something that is something you've been trying to process subconsciously that came out in your character, because the character is not you. You are different than the character. And I think that's really important to sort of stress in a conversation like this. You are not your character.
Yeah.
There is, one of my biggest pet peeves is when people get so invested in their character that anytime the character fails, they'll get like mopey on stream and bring the energy down for everyone, instead of taking that opportunity, like your turtle failed at the parkour. And instead of it being like, well, God, Jim, I'm just trying, you know, it's like, how can we make this failure delightful for everyone?
Do
you know what? I think.
Well, what's yours?
Oh, what's okay? Yeah.
Bodhi.
That's a great,
dodging that question.
That's a great question. Yeah, I'm just gonna skate past that now. So for me, do you know what's interesting? I am very much a forever DM. Like we played a game last night actually where I'm a player, and I've played in many different games. Last night was, and I said to Tom last night was the first time in my entire time playing D&D and not DMing it that I realized why people play, as opposed to why they DM. And for me, I've always been more attracted to the DM side, simply because, you know, growing up, I loved films, I loved, you know, all this amazing stuff, but I never loved Brad Pitt in Fight Club because he's, you know, doing amazing. I loved the concept of it. I loved the angle that it was portrayed. I loved the lighting that scenes were shot in. I loved, you know, the music that's put to the moment. And so for me, I've always been a little bit more of that kind of like third angle director kind of point of view from that kind of stuff. And so for me, do you know what, like, why do I love playing D? What keeps bringing me back? It's giving other people exactly what you just spoke about. It's allowing me to feed other people those moments of, you know, personal clarity outside of the game, as well as, you know, clarity within the game and the character that they're playing. It's, you know, hitting those moments of comedy where I am just crying with laughter because of something that my players have done, all the way through to, you know, sharing a moment where, you know, me and an NPC and a player are, you know, having a really deep emotional talk. You know, like, for example, we had one where our players had to tell someone that their husband had died, and that they had been traveling with him in our home game, and that they had been traveling with him for a while, and that he had died on the travels, and that they needed her help to kind of get into his house and you know, continue his work basically. And so that moment for me is just something I relish. I love hitting the drama, and I love hitting the highs. Like, it's just beautiful. Do you know what I mean?
No, I love it. And I'm so sorry that I'm laughing right now. So I used to work as a standardized patient, which is literally like, it's something where like you work in medical schools and you go in and you portray patient issues so that student doctors can experience them before they have to deal with them in the real world, right?
Yeah.
And you give them tips on like how to, like, you evaluate them on their empathy and their technique and all that kind of stuff. And one of the assignments is called Dead Husband Day. And it's how like the doctor has to go in and tell someone that they died. And for the doctors, it is terrifying. For the student doctors, it's terrifying. For the actors, it's hilarious because like normally you've got like you know that it's fine, like no one's actually
Yeah.
and normally you'll have like 5 or 6 exam rooms all set down a hallway, and like on one side the doctors enter, and on the other side you normally have like the break room for the standardized patients. So as you're like, you know, having some tea and chatting with your coworkers in the break room, you just hear this it's just over and over, like one room after the other. And it's really interesting because when you hear, like, it's so fun to, and this is terrible of me to say, but it is so fun to listen for that scream, because like you're required to do the scream. And then if you hear a door slam after that, it means the student doctor just couldn't handle it. Like they ran out of the room. And it's like, I'm like, oh, good scream. Very good. You did that right. Like,
you nailed that moment. Well done. And you know, I think for me, it's very much hitting the highs and the lows. It's enjoying that with you guys, as like almost living vicariously through my players is a big one for me. But what I was going to say,
it's really important to have that, like a great DM has to also be a powerful empath. Like you have to be able to feel what your players are feeling, not just for those moments, but I mean, the reward for that is you get to experience those moments with them, you know, but also to feel the vibe at the table and to like the subtle shifts amongst your players, so that you know when something might be going a little too far and you can rein it back before anything bad happens, or if you can, like, this is the moment where you can push somebody a little bit more, like, you know, bring a little more out of them, see what's going on. So absolutely, yes, experiencing that with them is a huge bonus to being a DM.
I fully agree. And I think, you know, you mentioned, so Tom did some acting school for a couple of years. I studied performing arts as a whole. So I did, you know, dance, singing, and acting for 2 years. And I think I cannot, like, as much as I've met D&D players who have come from playing D&D and they're incredible role players. You know, Blake Francis is one of those who's on our stream, just an absolute beast when it comes to role playing. And I don't think he's done much drama outside of that. I'm not sure how much drama he's done outside of D&D. And for me, I feel so lucky that I did 2 years of performing arts of drama, because it allowed me to, you know, hit things like emotional memory and draw on moments that really, you know, in my life have been painful, that I can then use those emotions in scenes. It allows me to understand, you know, when a fourth wall break Brechtian style, you know, makes sense, you know, when, you know, having, you know, all that, having the rhythm of the iambic pentameter from Shakespeare, you know, in a moment really elevates a character and certain things. So I think I feel blessed that I got a chance to do that, because it's given me the opportunity to now, as a DM and as a player, hit more of that stuff, be more like genuine. And like you said, be willing to experience a little bit more, because I've done it in front of, you know, couple hundred people, couple thousand people, and made myself the ass as well as, you know, the hero. Absolutely. And I've also, you know, I've also done it in front of just a friend while we're rehearsing, you know, and it's one of those things as well where you open up in a way that you're not expecting, and it allows you to.
It's huge for me. Like the concept of like rehearsal is something that I use a lot, because there is, for me, like, you know, I have mentioned like safe space a couple of times. For me, my definition of safe space is very different than the sort of like cultural lexicon definition right now, which is just like what I've found when it comes to safe spaces is that what people really mean is there can be no conflict. And there is, 100%. And everyone's terrified of that. For me, in my space, what I prefer is, and with no religious connotations at all, a sacred space. A space where, like, you are not looking at the defense mechanisms or the whatever issues are happening in the day for this person. You're looking at the person themselves. And what that allows you to do is to look through the conversation to see what's really going on, so that you can truly have a real conversation instead of, because I mean, as I said before the interview, and I'm hoping that you have seen, is that I don't do small talk. Like, there's just not. It's for me, it's such a waste of time. Mainly because, as you know, as an empath, it is very easy to identify what's going on with this person. What's this? What's this? Ooh, this is an interesting thing. Let's talk about that. I don't need that sort of like 15-minute introduction to a person that allows me to feel comfortable with them. I'm like, oh, I see you. I see who you are. Let's just go. Let's do it. I will show you exactly who I am every single moment to give you, because I know not everybody is an empath. You know, I know not everybody has that sort of gift. So I will be as open about exactly who I am as possible so that we are on equal footing, so that we can have the real conversation.
I struggle with that so often.
Well,
it's in struggle as in I'm the same as you, Kyle, and I just open up completely, and people are like, whoa, how dare you ask me about something that you clearly didn't know about, but is clearly bothering me. What do you mean? And you're like, sorry, I just tell that work is a bad day today because you just came from work and you're in a bad mood, so I thought I'd ask. My bad.
I'm intelligent and empathetic. That means I know what the fuck is going on with you.
I mean, for me, I'm just going back to my college days, and I can't tell you. You know, people would say, well, what kind of rap does that person have? Or what kind of pickup game does that person have? Mine was awful, because I would go and talk to someone and I would ask them that question, like, okay, so what is it that makes you really happy at a bar?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And they'd say, they'd want to talk about, what the best pop song that's out right now, or the movie or whatever. And it's very uncomfortable if you're not, you have to, like with a lot of things, you have to get comfortable in that space. And the more you're in that space, the more it's a place of ease for you. And for me, it's a place that I seek out. And when I see people are uncomfortable in it, by the way, you can see it on a D&D table as well. Like sometimes, if you get a table of complete empaths across the table, wow. Not to say that not having that isn't a different experience as well. But when you have that, everyone is going to embrace it. It's insane. And we have a lot of that in our game. But I think my point is that I guess what we don't appreciate as much is how uncomfortable that can make other people feel. And I have learned through the years of failing, of treading lightly if I need to, of kind of easing in, easing in with a couple.
I'm going to give you a little pushback on this, because I have experienced a lot of this, and the same type of thing where like you go to a bar, you're talking to somebody, and like just some people just are not there with that depth immediately. What I have found is all I have to do is, if somebody shows me that they are not comfortable with that space, is just look at them and say, are you okay? And that's it. No other questions, not making an assumption about why they might not be okay. Just, hey, are you doing okay? And with absolute sincerity, like I actually want to know. And what I will get back 99% of the time is something that they honestly want to talk about. And because I am not scared to have that conversation, and because I honestly do not believe in most social boundaries, like physical boundaries, absolutely, everybody gets their space, but social boundaries where it's like, oh, we probably like just, only professional talk or something like that, don't believe in it, don't have time for it, not interested. And because of that, the response that I get most of the time is people having genuine conversations, because I can create the sacred space inside me, and that allows other people to enter that space so that they don't need to be scared anymore. And even if that only lasts while you're sitting at the bar having a conversation with someone, that's fabulous. But like, I mean, you know, I went down on one of my friends had a work trip, and I went with them down to the National Gallery in DC. And everybody is all dressed up. You know, this is a fundraising event. There's a bunch of cool stuff going on. And one of the new curators was the wife of one of the people who were meeting on the business trip. And everybody is definitely in their business. They're like, okay, well, here's this, and we're gonna blah, 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 like nothing really being said about anything. And I saw the wife just sort of sitting there like on her best behavior, and just went over, and I'm like, so what is this? She's like, oh, and she started with like the spiel for donors, and which I definitely was not one. Like, don't get it twisted. I don't have enough money to actually like do anything with the National Portrait Gallery. But there's I just like, what's this all about? And she gave me the spiel, and I was like, no, not what you're gonna go tell. And I pointed to like 15 people, all of them. What's this actually about? And she just immediately was like, let's just grab a drink. And I was like, absolutely, 100%. So we went over to the bar, and we had a lovely conversation about the nature of art, and why this place is important, and why the history is important, and why this new thing that they're doing is important, and all of that. And just started, that for me is what is the most beautiful and most important part of any given day, is the ability to have that kind of conversation where everything gets laid on the table. No one has to be scared about the things that they're going to say. And you can argue with each other about things. And if you can disagree, and no one has to be scared about the disagreement. You can just have different opinions about things. And all of them can be right. And that's okay.
Do you know what? So first of all, I love your technique. That's kick-ass. That's super, super kick-ass. I appreciate the way that you go about, you know, engaging with people and breaking down those barriers. I think it's absolutely amazing. And two things that I want to say is, you know, just share, you know, and I'm Tom has seen me do this countless times. I have two friends that I grew up with in boarding school. You know, one of them is very a lad's lad, as we call them in UK, like very like geezer kind of bit. And geezer's not you'd have to say like a jock. No, like a mansman.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. And the other one is a little bit more like soft around the edges, but very like intrusive, very, very keeps things to themselves. And my whole thing, the way I do the same thing that you do, almost, and it sounds like an awful way to put this, but disarm people of that, you know, remove that layer of bullshit, you know, off the top, so that we can get down to brass tacks and actually have a meaningful conversation that we had both come away feeling was worth the time that we've both been sat here. Is my method is I open up. So I lead by being like, you know, my thing is like, oh, you know, so this is really like, oh, I'm really new here, so I don't really know what's going on. You know, if I was in your case, I'd be like, I don't really know what's going on here. I'm out of my depth here. I'd love to know a little bit more about it. Like, if you'd be happy to kind of break it down for like the layman and not the donor, you know, can we talk about, you know? And so that's kind of my method to go about it. And I find, for me, that has always worked for me. And with friends, you know, with my two friends who are very much, you know, in a different headspace to me, you know, it's very rare that, you know, I sit with them and we talk, you know, about like, I don't know, like small talk, like world problems, you know, whatever. We're typically talking about, oh, you know, you're struggling with, you know, oh, drinking too much, or, you know, this is going on at home, or, you know, you're trying to achieve this at the moment. How can we discuss this to get you closer to that, you know, that kind of thing. And I think something that I love, and I want to just reference, because at the moment I'm having an Avatar: The Last Airbender binge. I keep coming back to this with many people that I talk to at the moment. But something that I absolutely love is there's a scene with Uncle Iroh and Toph when they first meet each other. And he says, you know, there's one of the greatest gifts in life is sharing a tea with a stranger. And I've never heard anything so like accurate and just So true. And I think it, you relates back to what you said. Having that genuine conversation is just such a beautiful part of life. And I can't agree more with you that having that moment, and a lot of the times, like, it's with a random stranger, which is, my partner, like, for better or worse, probably loves and hates taking me places, because I'll go to like her friends or people that are friends of her friends and be like, so let's break you down and have a little bit of a chat, and I'll tell you about me, and let's really get into this. And she's often very proud of that, but also at times it's like, oh my God, he's like, oh, here we go. Here, like, he's going off to
but
someone
my
else.
favorite moment of that is I'm always the guy that ends up like in the bedroom with somebody, not having sex, having a conversation, sitting on the end of the bed, like that's always me at any given house party. But one of my friends invited me to read. She was throwing a baby shower for one of her friends, and she invited me to come read tarot cards. And you don't want an empath to read your tarot cards, because we don't fuck around. Like we're gonna tell you what's going on. And so they send in the first person. Like, it's a very fun, like, there's like 15 women there. It's all like this fabulous, fun, lighthearted thing with, like all the different baby shower games. And they send in the first person, and we spend about 15 minutes together. And she comes out of the room weeping and goes and sits down. And everyone just sort of stops and like, what just happened? What happened?
What's going on? What's he?
And she's like, no, it was fine. No, it's really good. It's just a lot. It's really good. It's just, and the next person, all the ladies were just like, yeah, right. You must cry at everything. Like, whatever. And so then the next person goes in, comes out weeping. And same thing. After like 10 minutes, they're fine. It was just, and then the third person goes in, they come out weeping. And now everybody's like, what is happening? Oh God, I've got to go in next. And so they did. Every single person came out crying.
Yeah.
And it was just, but it was always beautiful. It was always some little bit of self-discovery, that they had never dealt with before. And it turned this little sort of like fun, cute little encounter into a real bonding experience with all these people. And mind you, I had no idea that this was going on outside, because they just kept sending people in.
Yeah.
And when I get out, just everyone's just hugging. And it was amazing to see, because they had this shared experience that had opened them to something. And for me, that really is what D&D can be all about, is a shared experience, like that truly opens you to other fun, interesting concepts in your life. And it's just, I think it's imperative that people see it that way, that this is something that you can do that is relaxing. It is like super fun. It is just a delightful thing that you can do with your friends. And it doesn't matter how lighthearted it is. It doesn't matter, how much people are having a great time. You're going to discover something. You're going to discover something about your character or yourself or your friend or the world, something. There will always be a discovery. And I adore that. It just makes me so happy.
No, I agree. I think the more we're relatively new at playing D&D, but it is the more I think we get into all of the different aspects of it, preparing, building out a character, preparing early parts in a campaign, developing your character, finding out how the interactions are evolving on the table, then having particular moments with certain characters in certain situations, other characters in other situations. That whole process, that whole experience is somehow affecting my brain in a way that it just wants more of it. And I think to your point, there's something about, and I think to your point as well, Boats, there's something about this element of self-disclosure that I think for me, certainly when I was growing up all the way through probably my 40s, I looked at self-disclosure as a weakness.
Yeah.
I looked at it like my philosophy on life was to have this like
We did not get on for these years that Tom felt like this. I'll just have you know. That's make that very clear.
It is true, because my technique was to create a veneer of him, like being an impervious and put together dude, right? That had no weaknesses, and that, you know, didn't have any weak moments, or, you know, I'm sure I could be emotional, but it was all packaged. Everything was packaged, right?
Yeah.
And I just knew that just wasn't the impact that I was wanting to have in relationships and conversations, things like that. Was very surface level. And I didn't realize it was me.
It's very disconnected, and it doesn't allow you to do that. Like when you're sort of handing someone, and I absolutely get this, you know, like handing someone the package that they expect, this is me being upset. Here you go. You'll get one tear out of me. That's the extent of it. I've given you this little bit, and we will not do anything outside of this little box that I have given you. And then that doesn't allow you to actually deal with whatever's happening internally. So
that's it. That's exactly it. And so I think, you know, I learned late in life, and I think, you know, I don't think my dad ever figured it out. And maybe you can go through life. No, I don't think so.
He did not.
And many people can go through life and be perfectly blissfully, I wouldn't even say ignorant, but blissfully not wanting that or not being aware of it. My experience was that once I discovered it, and I'm not even sure the first time, but once I discovered self-disclosure, I realized something really, really interesting, which is if I used it like holding cards as an analogy, if I put a card down, more often than not, much more often than not, someone else, and they might be holding their cards close to their chest, they will put one down too.
Yeah.
And now you start putting cards down, and I have found over and over again that very few people will leave you twisting in the wind if you're self-disclosing. Most people want to, want to make sure that you're safe, make sure that you're okay, metaphorically or whatever.
Do you know what? I think I'll throw this out there to you just as a thought, because you said you're not sure when it kind of first happened. I think so. So Tom for many years was, like he said, that person. And
you can call me a dick. I don't care.
Yeah, a bit of a dick. And for many years, you know, you were in one headspace, and you know, very much my mother and I we've always been like, we're consistently who we are through every aspect of life. We can, like without remorse, be who we are, and nothing more, nothing less. And I think for you, the big moment at Switch, Tom started meditating and started doing meditation, and that was a big one. And I think that first Vipassana that you went on, Tom went on like I don't know how long the retreat was,
10 days.
10 days.
Yeah.
And it was in complete silence and meditating for 10 days. Yeah. I think you had to show, you know, when you're talking about putting the cards down, I think you had to put cards down for yourself first, so that you could then, in a weird way, put cards back down for yourself before you could start doing that with other people. And that was like a big moment for you, and it unlocked some shit that was pretty amazing.
I think that people don't realize just how much noise there is inside their own head. You know, like there's so much going on. And when you do something like that, when you go to like a silent retreat, like anybody can get through several hours of silence. There are enough pop songs and old TV episodes in your brain to get you through that. Conversations that you wish had gone differently, you know, relationships that ended poorly. There's plenty of noise in there for you to survive. Once you get past that sort of initial day of it, and like you wake up the next day and there's still no sound, like that is suddenly when things will start coming forward, because they're not being shoved out of your head by all that noise, you know? And that's, for me, that's something that I struggle with all the time, because I have DID. So there's literally like 7 other human beings in my brain, you know, like trying to yell things or do things, you know, and getting all of that noise to sort of line up so you can accomplish tasks is a real struggle most days. And it's one of those things where each of us is going to have our own journey you know, and each of us needs to find the tools that are actually going to get us to where we need to be, where we want to be. It's not about, and I think this is really important, it's not about what some psychologist on television told you or what Twitter is screaming at you or anything like that. You're going to have your journey and you're going to have your goal, and you need to get there. You know, for me, the goal is figuring out how to just get everybody in line without having to spend 2 hours in the morning setting myself up for that. You know, that is the thing, how to have real movement in my life. And it might be like completely different for somebody who has like anxiety or like depression or something like that. We're all going to be able to find, we hope we're all going to be able to find the right tools to get past it. And I think that's really important just in general to remember that there is, that the experience that you're having, you can be compassionate about your experience with other people. And the knowledge that being in a community does not mean that everyone is the same.
Yeah.
That there are resources in that community. There are outlets for things. There's support. There's all that kind of stuff. But you might never actually find someone that's going through exactly what you're going through. And that's okay. You don't need to try to mold yourself. Like DID is a vanishingly rare disorder because it requires that there is at least like a decade of trauma, you know, like consistent horrific things, because your brain doesn't just break because something bad happens. You know, it's a long journey to get to that disorder, particularly, you know. And so I know that like it is very unlikely that I am going to find somebody who has the exact sort of like situation that I do, but I can also sit down and I can have conversations with fabulous human beings like you about like, what was your journey? You know, this is the thing. You had a goal to get to essentially a better person that you wanted to see yourself as, and you did what you needed. Like when you discovered that, and this is the big thing, you had to discover that there was even a path first, that existed.
True.
And then once you do, then you choose to take that path and you do what you need to get over the obstacles in that path. So absolutely, I congratulate you. Fabulous. Good job. 100%.
Dude,
he's a kick-ass dad now. Kick-ass dad now.
But I would say right back at you, Kyle. You know, it sounds like you've been on quite a journey yourself, and you're just a really, you know, positive, your energy super positive, you're a light, smiling, happy person, and you exude that type of energy that allows people to, whether to be more comfortable, to just, you know, be in a better space. And I think that's a credit to you as well, because it sounds like your journey has been, you know, full of some twists and turns and some ups and downs and maybe a lot of downs. Yeah. So
absolutely. Well, and for me, that's a huge part. Like D&D was actually a huge part of me discovering what was going on, because I literally so when I first started playing, I would like pick these characters, and looking back on it now, I literally was playing the different personalities that had developed in my brain. Like that was just it. And I was like, you know, it was a way for subconsciously for me to start processing what was happening, you know? And one of the best things that I ever heard was one of my players, they're like, D&D is therapeutic, but it is not therapy. And I just want to make sure that people who are listening are like, D&D is not a substitute for a therapist. Like, do not make that 100%. Mistake. D&D, if you play D&D, like, you know, the day before a therapy session, you will probably have a lot to talk about.
Can you clarify? Can you just medically, because what you were describing in my mind is, you know, I've heard terms like multiple personality and that type of thing, but what is DID?
So that
so it's another
called that. But the issue is that part of it is that like there's no depictions in popular culture that are sort of accurate.
Yeah.
Like it's all this like hyper extreme cases. And there's what they've realized, like everything else when it comes to psychological medicine, is that everything's a spectrum, you know, and there are different ways for these things to evolve and different ways for a human brain to cope with whatever they're doing, you know. And so for some people, it, you know, they will actually lose time, you know, like they will literally, something will come over them. They will wake up in a different place. They won't know how they got there. They will not have any memory of what happened. That hasn't happened to me for a very long time. And part of it is, and this is one of the weird things about me DMing, is essentially what I developed as a defense mechanism against all of this stuff that was happening in my own brain is that flow that you talk about. What that is a liminal space. It is the space between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind that is literally used to sort of filter reality, because as we are speaking, your brain is, you know, pulling in every single sound from every single source around you, everything that is happening anywhere in your vicinity, you know, but your conscious mind is filtering most of that out so that you can concentrate on the thing that's in front of you, you know? So my conscious mind is currently filtering out my entire kitchen, the ring light that's right here, the computer, like the sounds in the apartment complex that are happening around me, so I can have a lovely interview. And your subconscious brain is essentially the giant computer that is processing all of the stuff that's happening all the time. And when you get into that liminal space between the two, it allows you to sort of bypass that filter so that you can just pull everything from everywhere at all times. The issue is that your conscious brain cannot retain that. And so it's one of the things where when you talk to somebody, especially like an artist that like gets into that space and you try to talk to them about what happened in that space afterwards, it's all very fuzzy. And so that's what happened with me, is that I developed the ability to sort of step into a liminal space that instead of these, I call them constructs because it feels like it gives me a little more control over the situation, you know. They can then move past me instead of just shutting me down completely. So I can still sort of remember that I was at a place, but I would not be able to tell you like exactly what happened while I was there. And the other thing that has happened to me is because the way that my trauma was formed, I have like severe PTSD in certain spaces. And what my construct sort of learned to do is if they really wanted to come forward and I wasn't having it, they would just put me into PTSD. Like literally I have constructs that have some somatic control over different aspects of my body. So like there's one that has control of my endorphins, which are essentially homemade heroin. Like you make a heroin substitute in your body every day, all the time. So that if you like break your arm, your body will get flooded with endorphins so that the shock doesn't kill you. It sort of shuts down a lot of your pain receptors, makes you feel nice. And so I have a construct that will literally flood my body with endorphins if it wants to come forward, because then I sort of just go to bed. You know, it's literally like shooting up heroin and it's like, oh, okay. And then it can shut me into the PTSD, which is a self-reinforcing loop. So while it's out there in the world doing the things that it's doing, I am stuck in the worst moment of my life, reliving like that horror show constantly. The reason that I am sort of saying this is twofold. One is when you have been through the absolute shit show of a life that I have experienced, You can get really down, and most of the time, if that's the direction you're taking, you will enter free fall at some point and you just won't survive it, you know?
Yeah.
The other direction that you can take is to look at the fact that the world around you is amazing. It is gorgeous. And you get to meet gorgeous people that are absolutely delightful all the time. And you get to play these games and you get to do the things that you want. And there's a beautiful sky outside, and there are animals and trees and an ocean, just all kinds of stuff, you know, that this is the world. You will never be able to explore the whole world, but you can try. You can try to see just how beautiful things can potentially be. And because I feel like, because I chose that direction, what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for what's the most beautiful moment that I can have with someone else. What is that thing? And it can be so many different things to so many different people. But when it comes to DMing, I have the ability to enter a liminal space while I am DMing. And the bonus of that is that I can literally keep the entire world in my head. I can keep every NPC, I can keep every item, I can keep every stone of every city that we have built on this continent. I can keep that in my head and pull out pieces as necessary, which means that my players can do anything that they want, and I will be able to give them a real reaction to it. What's going to happen in the world because you made this choice? So it feels grounded and concrete and allows them to make grounded and concrete stories around it. So again, it feels there is that impact to the story that you won't get if everything's just sort of in free fall, you know? The issue is that I have to ask my players next week what happened, because I'll remember like big, like, oh, that's right. Okay, we did do this. Okay, here we go. Now I'm sort of starting to piece it back together.
Gotcha.
But it's really, if you can get into that flow as a DM, it just allows you to be completely present in the story that is happening. And you essentially become, instead of being another player or the storyteller, you just become the story. And all of your characters are playing inside you. You know, it's just, you have this space that you've created, and they come in and they're going to do things, and you're just going to react to all of the things that they're doing in the world. And you're going to pick, here's my favorite, here's a Baylor, that's a fun toy, let's put that in there. Let's see what this happens. Here's a legendary weapon. Let's see what you do with this. Here we go. And at the end of it, what you get is you get to tell the stories that your players want to tell in the world that you wanted to create. And it's just a glorious, glorious moment.
Do you know what? How much does that sound familiar? Fucking me coming to tea the next week being like, coming to my mom and being like, can I see your notes from last session? Because I don't remember what I called the library that you guys went to. And you know, and
I remember there were books and a lot of them, and there was like a monster or something.
Exactly. you know. First of all, I just want to say thank you for sharing that and breaking that down for us. I feel like, you know, a lot more educated on both the situation and that whole condition. I don't know the correct terminology.
It's technically a disorder. It's
disorder.
Dissociative identity disorder. So
disorder. Amazing. And, you know, I think, one, I appreciate you just being so honest and open about that. I think, you know, it's super interesting as well, because, you know, it's very interesting that you're battling this constantly and dealing with this constantly. And it, you know, it makes me appreciate you as a person very much in terms of, you know, how put together you are, and, you know, across the board of what we see on social media and all that kind of stuff, of just how well, you know, you portray yourself and what you give to the community and what you do across the board. I think, I respect the internal difficulties that you go through, and then are able to be so helping with things like Fig and, Roll Together and all this stuff. And, being a huge ally of the alphabet mafia, as you call it. And doing all that stuff. It's something that, a lot of people who have internal struggle shut down to. They lock themselves away and go, I'm dealing with so much that I cannot be there. Yeah. I cannot be everyone else's support. And I really, truly respect that about you. Again,
well, it's very helpful for me too. And a big part of it is you cannot get through, like, regardless of what the issue is that you're facing internally, you cannot get through it alone. You're not going. There is only so much information that you have in your own brain. There's only so many solutions that you can possibly have in your own head. And one of the things that happens is that when you're dealing with an internal struggle, your world becomes 1 foot square, just your skull. You are living in, this world is so tiny. Yeah. And as soon as you start talking to somebody else about it, suddenly it opens up to the size of a room. And there's more space for it, and you can move it around. You can look at it. You can get, and it's just that support alone is huge. And one of the reasons that I look so put together is because I work with people that know what I'm all about. Like, they know that there's going to be some struggles, but I'm then going to bring to the table every part of me. Like, and like, there's a lot of me to bring. So and it's just, so you find the people that are going to help you move through that. And that's one of the reasons that, like, I really wanted to help out with the stream team when I started. It was, I want to find a way to connect all of these streamers so that there is a way for us to all get to the place that we want to go, even though we're not all aiming at exactly the same target. But I know that if we work together, we can all help each other hit the various targets. And then once we hit those targets, let's figure out new targets to hit. And then we're going to go after those. And one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about, like, dealing with, like, project management or, like, setting something like that up is that there is just so much that goes into it behind the scenes. My calendar typically has between 20 and 30 hours of meetings on it every week, and it might be check-ins with people that I'm working with, developing new ideas, finding new people for the stream team, finding people for, planar to allies, finding people for Fig, doing session zeros. Like, what are all of these meetings you have to have? And one of the things that everybody that I work with knows is, when I am in a meeting, I am here to be efficient. This is not I want to hear myself talk situation. It's like, okay, I have a half an hour with you every 2 weeks. I need to download all of the shit that has been going on for the last 2 weeks to you, so that then we can have a conversation about what the next step is. And if I don't end a meeting with a next step of some kind, if there's not a reason to move forward, then I feel like the meeting is a failure, Whereas a lot of meetings that people will have are just like, there's somebody standing there like, and now projections are going to be this, and I just sent this to you in an email. We didn't actually need to do this, but I like the attention, and this is the way I get it. So deal with it. So but have you all like done anything like that? Like, are you like involved in like a stream team, or like, do you have like certain partners that you like work with a whole lot?
Oh yeah, so a couple things. First of all, I just coming back to I'll bridge to a couple of different things. So first one is I again just appreciate, because I feel I like, in some ways I feel like, right, how do I get this out right? It almost instantly from the moment we started talking today, it's so weird. We choose great people. I don't know how we keep doing this. I think it's because we meet great people, they recommend great people, and we end up having amazing conversations. And again, this is another podcast where I'm coming away going, holy shit, well, I'm going to be checking in with Cyle over the next couple months and going to be talking to Kai about some shit going forward, because I just feel that like almost instantly when we started talking, I felt like you and I are very aligned. We think very similarly. We act very similarly, both as dungeon masters and as people. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a disorder of that level in any way, shape, or form. I'm in some ways fortunate, in some ways, the benefits that come from those things.
You are very fortunate. That's it. It's something that I'm sort of battling right now online, is because a major Marvel film came out and depicted this as something that you're going to be able to do amazing magical things, because there is one of the things that happens a lot with disorders, and even things like anxiety and depression, is they get sort of just, what is the word? Sorry, I just lost the word. They get not modernized. It is the dream. It is the people create a fantasy around it of what this is. What they see is like the struggle that people are going through to overcome it, and they see the overcoming of that struggle. And I think, because I am an optimist, I believe that what they're seeing is the strengths that people who have gone through it possess after they've gone through it, and they want that strength. The thing is, that strength is accessible to everybody. You don't need to have a disorder to get there. You can absolutely just be a great person, and exercising those muscles will literally give you the same strength. It's like the difference between somebody having to go through physical therapy, and somebody just going to the gym. You're going to be working the same muscles. You're going to be developing in the same direction. Totally fine. And we don't need to sort of, create a
glamorize it. Glamorize it.
Glamorizing it.
Yeah. 100%. And I think the fact that you've spoken so openly about it, and all that kind of stuff, it's really important, and I think it's super, super great. And again, like with things like that, I've definitely suffered from anxiety. I do regularly suffer from anxiety and depression in the past, but it's one of those things of it's something we go through and we battle through, and like you said, we get stronger and we come out the other end. And people often see the superpower that comes with, cool, I know I can conquer this shit, so I can probably conquer most other things. And that like you said, that's something that they see that as like something that should be glamorized, but it's not, because the struggle you go through to get to that place is fucking dark, lonely at sometimes, and very hard to conquer. So I really, really appreciate you saying that, and again, feel very aligned with you on a lot of those things. The other thing I wanted to say is, based on your question, fuck yeah. Like it feels like we have 100 fucking meetings every freaking week. Like it feels like I'm constantly like, oh, I'm meant to be planning my next session right now, but I've got a call in 20 minutes. So, and so on and so forth. And we do work with some amazing people, like my writing partner, Tony, who's actually in America, and he's working on, I do the floating island bits of our world, and he does the on the ground bits of our world. And we work with Mark Garcucia on stuff, and we work with Underground Oracle Publishing, and again, any other collaboration that anyone wants to have with us. Typically, we're very open to working with people, because like today, it's very rare, it feels like, that we choose the wrong person and walk into something where we're like, oh, that was a fucking mistake. Like we should not be, talking to them, or we should not be hanging. Like, it's very rare that seems to happen for us. I think we're both lucky and choosing well at this point. But I just really see a lot of value in what you've said today. And I hope anyone who does listen to this hears that and knows that, there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, and that, you can find support from other people. And like you said, you and I, we've gone through very different sets of trauma. For me, like my big awakening that Tom had, I had cancer twice, and that shifted my life dramatically and just put me in a place where I could think about things differently. I appreciated life more. I appreciated people. Like you said, I look up at the sky and I'm like, fucking hell, isn't that beautiful? I can go sit on grass and do nothing and just appreciate the sounds of the town around me and just, do that kind of stuff. And so I think though we have not gone through the same things, I feel like intrinsically connected with you over
well, that's the
1,000 miles away,
That's the thing about dealing with trauma and pain is, and this is something that I have tried to sort of express on Twitter, and it is very difficult in the medium of Twitter to get the nuance of this correct, And what it is that there are a lot of people in the world that center what makes them special on their pain or on their trauma. That it is, they think that the fact that they've gone through something makes them special. And they will sort of, like you've got virtue signaling. There's also, I'm seeing like a lot of trauma signaling where it is, well, my trauma was worse than yours. Well, my disorder is worse than yours and things like that. And when you start getting to the other end of it, one of the things that you realize is that pain does not make anyone special. Trauma doesn't make anyone special. We all have it. Everybody's been through it. And ultimately pain is pain. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how bad it was or how much you had it. You've all experienced it. We've all experienced it. We all can empathize with each other when it comes to pain. And we don't need to do, a dick measuring contest about who had it worse. Ultimately what it is it's not, if you center yourself, what makes you special on how much you've been hurt in your life, essentially you're never going to get out of it, because that is the thing that you're going to use to gain whatever you want from it, the attention, the support, all that kind of stuff. If all that you're talking about is what hurt you, that's what you're going to get. You are going to get the people who are like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you got hurt. Oh my God, sympathy, 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 sympathy. You get a completely different thing when you start moving through it. And that is strength, and it's clarity, and it's an understanding that sympathy, while nice, is like sugar. It is empty emotional calories. There's nothing that can be done with it. You just...
That was a great description. That was a great description.
And when you get through it, suddenly you will start having conversations like this about, what does it mean to actually be supportive of somebody that's been through this? What does it mean to center yourself on moving through whatever you're doing, and then find the people that you need to help you make it through there? What does that look like? What strength and insight and wisdom do you gain from that? That is the thing that will make you special, because we've all had pain, we've all had trauma. You're not special for having it. You are special because you're an amazing DM. You're a beautiful artist. You can sing gorgeously. You are incredible with numbers. You are amazing at accounting. Whatever it is, that's the thing that actually makes you special. And living inside your own pain stops you from being that.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think on that note, I think that if ever there's a message to slam the gavel down on and project out to the
Court
world
is adjourned.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the freaking one right there. I think, and I fully agree with you. And I would say, in some ways, those people leave themselves open to being hurt more, to experiencing more pain, because they're almost fishing for, some of that stuff, to continue the ball rolling. It's something they continue fishing for. And I think you're totally right. You need to find the thing that makes you special.
There definitely needs to be I'm going to throw a little nuance into that statement. There's a difference between victim blaming and dealing with somebody who is, because again, it's a dopamine rush. It literally, the entire video game industry is based on that dopamine addiction that we 100%. Have. And social media amplifies that dopamine addiction. And that sympathy, it's sugar, but it's also dopamine. That is a dopamine hit. And helping somebody move past that desire for that dopamine hit, it is difficult in and of itself, So
100%.
I'm absolutely there. Yes, absolutely. people will look for that, but it's not because they're a bad person. It's not because they're broken. It is because your body and your brain is specifically designed to want that thing. You know?
Yeah, and if that's been your coping mechanism, it's how you get it. It's and that's something that, you know, people gravitate to. But I think, you know, honestly, Kyle, I think, you know, I'm just looking at our list of topics.
We didn't cover many.
We didn't hit a single one today,
and that's just okay.
And that's exactly what we were meant to.
Flash round. Let's do a flash round. 1 sentence answers for everything you've got on that list.
Okay. All right. We'll do a quick one. We'll do a super quick one. So first one is Delver's Dream, season 3, The Dwarven Mine. How's it going? How are you feeling? And what's you know, the best part of that at the moment for you?
Okay, fabulous. We have just started doing some things that I haven't seen anywhere else on the internet. We figured out how to do actual live cutscenes with no darkness. Like, we can just pop over to a new scene. So we did that at the end of season 2, where we actually had, in the giant fight, in between each round, we would cut to 1,000 years ago what this thing is with 2 of the characters in the fight, and then 500 years ago after the round 2, and then a couple days ago. So you could see that progression while you're watching this fight, right? We are now doing that with our Hunter's Harvest stream, which is our secondary campaign, where you actually we have a band of villains and a band of heroes, and you get to see, in each episode, we'll spend like 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, so that you can see the villains developing their plans and the heroes developing their plans. And so the audience gets to actually witness what's happening. It's not that sort of, ooh, mysterious villain doing a thing. You get to like see what's going on with these characters. And then when they actually come together, it's gonna be freaking delightful. When it comes to Delver's Stream, just killed a character yesterday because I will not bend the lore. Like, you can break the rules, but you can't bend the lore. And we had established that there was an archlich who was trying to take over the world and is still there. They did not defeat her at the end of season 2, but like, they've got some plans. She had figured out how to summon these things. In canon in D&D, there's a thing called a Nightwalker, which is a CR20 undead creature. It's terrifying. And the only way you can create it is if you take a person and you throw them into the negative energy plane, and then this thing will emerge that is sort of the replacement for that person on the prime material plane. And the only way to get the person back is to send the Nightwalker back through, and that's almost impossible. So they kept coming out, and the Archlich had control of that. But they learned exactly what happens when you throw somebody into the negative material plane, and one of my characters did that. Wow. And suddenly a Nightwalker appeared. None of them were prepared for it. And I was like, you know what happens? Like, it is canon. This is what happens if you send someone to this plane physically, and now there is a Nightwalker. And it killed one of the characters outright. In order to get it back, another character had to like transport themselves to the positive energy plane while they sent the Nightwalker to the negative energy plane. Whole thing. The reason I love this is because now that person, like, in our world, magic has been shut down. At the end of season 2, the God of Wisdom shut down magic on the world. He wasn't able to shut down magic in one city because there were so many like huge artifacts there to keep it going. But what has happened is, because of that and because of what's happening with the crystal sphere around it, no planar travel is possible except by this one touchstone. And you have to have 2 things and it'll send it to different planes.
Amazing.
Okay. But now, in order to save himself from the devastating effects of the positive energy plane, he sent himself to the astral sea. So now we're going to have him out there in the astral sea getting to play potentially with some Radiant Citadel fun stuff and some Spelljammer delightfulness. So I can now have, but because I know how to do these cutscenes now, I can have him like actually cut to a completely different overlay, completely different map, all that kind of stuff with him instantaneously, while the other group is still on the prime material plane trying to figure out what's going on. So that is what we're doing.
Amazing. So can I just clarify, does that mean your PCs are playing multiple characters in a in a session? So they're playing
These are completely different people. So it's literally so we've
you're cutting.
Yeah, so we had three heroes and 3 villains, and they each have their own overlays and their own things. They're in completely different spots.
Nice.
There's 6 people, and so 3 people will be on stream. And we introduced this week, so we did a fun little thing where it was like, we do our intros at the beginning, and it's nice and it's fun, and we do our sponsors, and it's delightful. And then we're like, what the fuck is going on? What the hell is happening? And suddenly the whole stream flipped, and now you've got these villains who are coming in just wrecking shit.
I love it. You have consistently shown some really creative things with, even, your settings about, quest for resources in Hunter's Harvest, just to the resources are actually in, the monsters or the animals. And I think that's just that you have a real creative slant on the worlds that you're building. Really, really interesting. So we invite folks to have a look at Delver's Dream. They're on season 3. Hunter's Harvest, A Quest for Resources, is another great stream for y'all to check out. I'm definitely going to check out this this dual, cutaway thing. That's something that I'm very, very enticed by. Well, Kyle, over to you as well. What things are important on your side with regard to wanting to get your audience to know about, or our audience to know about?
Absolutely. So the first thing would be Planar to Allies is our Twitch channel. That is where we do 2 actual plays. We do Hunter's Harvest, we do Dungeon of Delver's Dream. All kinds of fun shenanigans over there all the time. Great role playing. We also are, because I'm not super crunchy, we do something called narrative combat or 10-second combat. So if the combat is something that you just, like, it's too much to listen to somebody go through all the roles and all that kind of stuff, if that's what's keeping you from listening from coming and joining an actual play, come on over, because we do all the fun stuff over there and still plenty of dice for all the dice goblins, still plenty of dice. But if we're at the end of if we've got like half an hour left and I know we can't get through combat, we'll do a narrative combat instead, so that you still get that feeling, that narrative sense. And the 10-second combat that I mentioned is very specifically, like, if there is a duel, like if on your turn I decide that, like, I want a better story from you about, like, I'm a fighter and I will hit you twice. If I want a better story than that, what we'll do is 10-second combat. You literally have 10 seconds to tell me one move that you're making, not a turn, but one move. And it might be like, I'm going to grab my sword off my back and I'm going to swing directly at your head. And I'll be like, 10 seconds, great. I am going to duck under that sword and I'm going to sweep the leg so that you're on your face now. What are you going to do? And then it's that kind of combat, so that it really is a very cinematic feel to it. Also, we do on Fridays, we do Magnificent Mythologies, which is where we bring on a BIPOC or Alphabet Mafia creator from a different culture. We don't do European mythologies because WotC has that absolutely covered. We got all the white people mythology we need. We're good. I love Celtic mythology, Greek mythology, Roman, Norse, all of it. I absolutely adore it, but we got plenty. So we'll bring on somebody from a different culture, and we will take one story that they love from their culture, whether it's a superstition, it is an actual myth, just a story that they heard that the grandma told them, whatever it is. And we will actually listen to that story on stream, and then we will create a full one-shot adventure.
Wow.
On stream in like about 2 hours. And incredible. We'll create the whole narrative for it, all of the characters, everything. And then the Foundation for Inclusivity in Gaming, FIG, will pay for an artist to come in and create like a gorgeous cover and internal art for it. We'll pay for the layout of it, and then we post it on our site. The lovely thing about this is that 100% of the IP belongs to the artist. So while I am credited as a writer on the things, I will never get a dime from it. And I do not have any control over what this artist wants to do with it. They can do anything at all they want, because that is how you can be a true ally in spaces like that, is if you give up your control over these things and let somebody who is different than you lift their voice and utilize this resource that you've created for them however they want. And the thing that I would say to everybody is please go head over to Magnificent Mythologies on DriveThruRPG, because every time you shout out any of these, because they're all on the same page, every time you shout out a single adventure or go get a single adventure, you are helping a dozen creators of color.
Yeah.
By drawing attention to just one, because if people go to that page, they'll see all of them. The cover art, gorgeous. So love that. And then every other week we do our Wonders of the World, where we do world building on stream with Connor, the healer DM. And that is super fun because we get to, like, if we didn't get to spend too much time like in a city, I can then build out the city like afterwards, all that good stuff. We are planning on starting a couple of new streams. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. Oh, we are also working with Coyote and Crow, which is a decolonized indigenous setting. That's going to start in 2 weeks. It's going to be the Coyote and Crow talk show. It's going to be a 6-episode limited run where we're going to be bringing on people from Coyote and Crow to talk about it and help people who are into Dungeons and Dragons and other TTRPGs, help them understand how they can enter easily into Coyote and Crow and start utilizing it as a fabulous setting, especially like a decolonized indigenous setting. So seeing what could have happened in the US if the Europeans had never arrived. What would it look like today? It's gorgeous. And our second episode is going to be live at Gen Con with Logan, who is one of the DMs. It is so exciting. I'm so
very cool.
Gen Con, yay! Other than that, I would love to shout out the Foundation for Inclusivity in Gaming. Absolutely go head to fig4all.org if you would like to help support us, if you would like to help support creators of color. We are aggregating the smaller donations that we get and then utilizing that to help sponsor not only the Magnificent Mythologies, but also sponsor like specific streams or events that are happening that are like Alphabet Mafia or BIPOC creations in the space, so that we can help lift those voices in a real and non-performative way. And finally, there is the Rolling Together stream team. There's 15 different streamers on the team. They're all fabulous. You can find us at twitch.tv/team/rolling together. That'll have a list and show you who's on whenever. We've got like 15 hours worth of programming on Sunday, Mondays, and Tuesdays, and then at least 8 hours of programming on every other day. So there's someone, you can find us. We're going, we're doing the things, and it's fun and delightful, so come and join us. Yay.
Incredible. You know what? So much great content for everyone to check out. So much amazing work for you guys to co-investigate. I hope you roll high on your investigation checks as you dive through all of that Kyle just said. You know what? First of all, I've seen some of the stuff that Fig is doing and those mythologies that you've spoken about. They're freaking awesome. They are really, really great. I can totally testify for that. That's something that I very much think is super sick. And you guys definitely should go check that out on DriveThruRPG. For us here, we're Homie and the Dude, father and son, TTRPG, MMA team. If you didn't know, we have an actual play podcast where we have players roaming around and basically conquering shit in a land filled with floating islands, steampunk technology, and heavy droughts as it is. Yeah, that's something we're doing at the moment. Furthermore, we have just started our newsletter of holding. So if you would like to stay up to date with any information about us, content that we're bringing out, as well as also receive free D&D supplements, be entered into every giveaway that we ever do, go do that. It's on our website, and that is homieandthedude.com. You can find the newsletter of holding section. Just type in your email. It is completely free. You get all of that good stuff for totally free. And then the final thing that I'll say is we have a Discord server as well. So if you want to come and see behind the scenes content, if you want to see art from the stream early, if you want to just ask Tom and I valid questions or stupid questions, we'll answer them. And we're happy to interact with you there. So please go and join our Discord server. We'd love to have you guys there. Otherwise, we're Homie and the Dude across all platforms. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, Kyle.
Thanks, Kyle.
We'll catch you guys in the next one. See you soon.
Yay!
All right. See you guys.